Good morning. To bring this down to me in just a little bit. A few weeks ago, William asked me to come and share today about how I have seen God in the past several months. And I thought, gosh, William, how much time do I have, right? There have been so many moments in the past couple of years, even as difficult as they have been, that I have seen God. And in many cases, it's through the faces here in this room, through thoughts and deeds that have been shared. Communion bread left on our front doorstep, flowers, notes, texts, a community helping to embrace our parents, both sets, as they have packed up 20 to 35 years of their lives and made significant transitions. There have been so many moments where I have seen God in so many people and those here in this space and others. I remember one moment in particular, a moment with Sharon. I was stopping to drop something off here at the church. This was in the height of the pandemic. And we just had this moment where we, above our masks, our eyes filled with tears. And it was this recognition that life is hard. Life in a pandemic is harder. But perhaps the hardest thing of all is not being able to hug each other in this shared moment. I'm so glad we're on the other side of that. And I'm grateful for all of those experiences. I'm also really grateful and have seen God in things that we have avoided. Our parents have stayed safe. We have stayed healthy. Jared and I have both maintained our jobs, so we didn't have to think about what came tomorrow. But I don't really want to talk about those things today. I could spend the rest of the service talking about those things. I really want to talk about something a little deeper, a little bit more personal, if you'll allow me. I want to talk about how I have seen God in the darkness. Not in people's response to the darkness, not in ways I've avoided darkness, but in those moments of just bleak, because I have seen God there too. You know, Carl Jung was a psychoanalyst. He was around in the early part of the 20th century, and he talks a lot about the shadow and light of people, that we all have this shadow side, parts of our personality that we tend to keep in the corners and ignore, and that those things can be both good and bad parts of ourselves. But almost inevitably, they always fester when they're kept in the dark, when they're neglected. And that only by exploring them, reflecting them, taking them on consciously, can we bring them into the light and bring them into the better part of ourselves. He says everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is within the embodied, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the bleaker and denser it is. You know, I think this idea of shadow and light can certainly be taken and expanded into the experiences that we have as well. And I'm sure everyone in this room has had an opportunity to experience something that was tragic and sorrowful, but in the end, beauty and light emerged. I know I have had that experience in my family's life multiple times. And yet it's the lesson that I continue to have to remind myself and to continue to learn. I think perhaps the greatest example of this is with Christ himself, with his death. The dark day of Good Friday, and 3 days later, the beauty and light that emerged as he was resurrected. There have been moments of darkness. There have been times that I have had to learn this lesson again in these past 2 years. And even though we have avoided such tragedy in my family, we have kept our jobs, we have stayed safe, there have still been moments of darkness. For me personally, I know every experience is unique, but for me personally, part of it has been with my work, which in the pandemic actually doubled in volume with no additional resources. Trying to keep up with that, trying to support my team, many of whom are young mothers who are also trying to teach their kids at home. Trying to do the same, trying to keep my own children happy and healthy and feeling hopeful when they're feeling isolated and worried about if they are learning what they need to learn in school through the screen. It's been concern around my husband who, when the whole world shut down, his travel picked up. Worry about him staying safe and healthy, worrying about what he might bring home to us, but also recognizing that the alternative was bleaker still. All of these things, the isolation and the loneliness, and at the end of the day, with the added responsibilities of our reality, not having time to reach out to the friends who could keep me kind of healthy and sane. It's been hard, and yet I'm so blessed. But in all of this, what I have experienced can sometimes feel like cracks, canyons in my core. Feels jagged sometimes. The edges are sharp. And it's caused me to have all kinds of internal monologues and a few heated discussions with God himself. Admittedly, some of those discussions sound a little bit like Yosemite Sam, full of anger and resentment and lots of whys. But when I tire from those tirades and take a moment to breathe, when I allow myself to be still, I've noticed a few things that are really important. The first is that these canyons, these crevices, these gaping holes in my core that I have experienced in the last 2 years, they're not new. They're reflections of cracks that have existed for a very long time. And the added burdens, the added responsibilities, the added stress and worries of the past 2 years have certainly allowed them to expand, to grow wider. But they're not new cracks. The other thing that I've noticed is as I stare closely at those cracks, I'm able to see light, rays of light streaming through. I'm able to see God shining through those cracks. And as he shines, he is offering an invitation to me to take a look, explore, reflect, and do something other than try to shimmy up those cracks with wadded up bubble gum and duct tape, as I have wanted to do in my past. And I've also been able to see through that light the many people and the opportunities that he's given to me to take that journey and to do that work. Things that I couldn't see without that light. And I'm grateful. I'm in the midst of that work now, and boy, it's hard. It's full of days of 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But it's beautiful, and I'm grateful for it. It brings to mind a line from a Leonard Cohen song, Anthem, where he says, "There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." Thanks be to God for the light, and thanks be to God.